Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online character build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, we're going to be taking a look at the Lord Knight build, and to be honest, this is something that I play on a regular basis on live, and a lot of times when I play it this way, a lot of people never notice a difference, and they really are surprised at how quickly we can get content done. So the Lord Knight is a casual roleplay type build. It is not a meta build. It is something that I created a long time ago and it was originally called Meridius Guardian. Later changed it to something else, and then it became the Lord Knight. And it's been that way for a while now, and it's kind of been slowly changing and becoming more. But now it's back. And it's back for good for those who want to play it. A little background story on this character idea was originally they were supposed to join. They were a wood elf that wanted to be part of the knights under Queen. Oh my gosh, under the high elf queen, and what happened was she winded up having something that the other knights didn't have, and that was the gift of magic and Templary, if you will. And so she was accepted into a different group and trained in her abilities and everything, and kind of became like a paladin type character, but instead became what was known as the Lord Knight. A Lord Knight is somebody who is trained in the ability of combat, and mainly how to take advantage of melee combat. So sword and shield, two-handed, dual wield, they're usually trained in all that in order to fight the enemies that they face in either Cyrodiil, and the Dolmens against Molag Bal and the Worm Cult. All that kind of stuff is the story behind them, and as they progressed, they became more and more into a more powerful variant of itself. So that is the story, and this is the character build. So going in, you can see we are a Wood Elf Templar. You do not have to be a Wood Elf. You can be any race with this build, and all races work really good for it. They all have their benefits. They all have their strengths and weaknesses, I'll put it that way. As you guys can see, we have 15 into Magicka, 34 into health, 15 into stamina. We have a 20k Magicka, 35k health, 25k stamina. Not all races will have the same attributes. Any race that gets a stamina bonus will be pretty close. Any race that gets a stamina health bonus is going to have a little bit more health. Any race that has a Magicka bonus will definitely have a bigger Magicka pool, so you kind of have to tinker around with your attributes to get it in the right place. As you can see, we have 1085 magic recovery with a 905 stamina recovery. We do have a 2156 weapon damage with a 31% weapon critical, 22% spell critical with an 1335 spell damage. And then our spell resist is coming in at 23,000. Physical is coming in at 21. I know a lot of people are going to say that's really low, but I do want to show you guys this. So if you use your buff, your resistance buff, you go to 31 and 29. With the combat prayer, you go to 32, almost 33,000 spell resist, and 32, I think it's 31 or 32 physical resist. So you're actually going to be almost on par with a lot of the other, high-end resistance tanks. Alright, moving on. We do have the Atronach Mundus Stone. Skip the Minor Berserk for now. We are using Tri-Stat food. Like I said, this character is trained in combat. There's a reason why they have Minor Berserk at all times. Alright, and we are using Tri-Stat food to give us all three stats. So moving on over here now to the sets and everything, we are using the tripods for our resource management for when we're tanking. We are using spell power pots for when we need to be a healer. We do use this when we need to be a damage dealer. And then sometimes we just stick with the tri-stat food most of the time. But we do have Witch Mothers and the Dubious Cameron Throne as well if we need it. We do have some other weapons in our inventory. I will go over that in a second. Let's go ahead and talk about these sets. Starting with the first set, and yes, this is the one that gives us Minor Berserk all the time, and that is Slime Craw. Slime Craw is actually a really good set that does get overlooked a lot. And the reason why is because it does spell critical and weapon critical. You also gain Minor Berserk at all times, increasing your damage done by 8%. This is all damage. Magic and stamina, you will get that 8% damage boost. Now going over to our next set, so you can, or sorry, let me read what this does. 1-piece bonus, spell crit and weapon crit. 2-piece bonus, gain Minor Berserk at all times, increasing your damage done by 8%. The next set we're using is primarily a stamina-based set, and that is Kvetch's Gladiators. Kvetch's Gladiators has always been my preferred set to use on tanks, and the reason why is you do a lot of light and heavy attacks with them anyways. So the 2-piece adds weapon critical, 3-piece weapon critical, 4-piece weapon damage, and then when your target is under 25% health, and add 1800 weapon damage to your light and heavy attacks. So this applies to all light and heavy attacks with any weapon that is stamina based. So dual wield, two-handed, bow, and sword and shield all gain 1800 weapon damage on light attacks. Alright. Moving on to the next set. The next set is, of course, Plague Doctors. Plague Doctors is a really good set. A lot of people, again, overlook this set due to other sources of sets. But I really like Plague Doctors because for this character in particular, being a Wood Elf, you're going to have a really low health pool. And this way you can build up that health pool as high as you need it to for different situations. So as you can see, the 2-piece adds max health, 3-piece max health, 4-piece healing taken, and then the 5-piece is 4,000 max health. Now there used to be a bug that when you would swap bars, you would lose that 4,000 health benefit, but you don't lose that anymore at all. Sorry, my allergies again, guys. My apologies. Alright. So let's go over the traits and enchants on the gear, starting with the monster set, the chest, and the legs. We are using tri-stat enchants with a invigorating on the helm. The chest is reinforced to give us higher resistances, and then the legs are also invigorating to give us that higher, just a little bit more in our recoveries here, so we can utilize some of it to our advantage. Alright. Moving on to the smaller pieces, we are using sturdy on the shoulders, the gloves, the belt, and the legs, and the boots. And all of them have a stamina enchant in it. The pieces that are light and medium are the helm and the belt. The rest of it is all 5 pieces of heavy, and this gives you 100 points difference in resistance if you're using a helm, or medium gloves. So that's a 100-point difference in resistances. It's not much, and you really won't see a difference. You won't even notice the difference. So this way I like to set it up, because it's easy to get a medium monster set helm most of the time, and it's easy to craft a light belt. I mean, it's harder to get a set that has a light belt than it is to get a monster set with a heavy and medium. Because you can't get a heavy drop set that has a light belt. Alright, now going on to the jewelry, we have 2 rings here with Trirune on them. I've been using these a lot lately, and the reason why is because it helps you, allows you to hybridize your character, but it really allows you to build out your resource pools more effectively. See, a lot of people don't realize that the more resources you have in other sources, the more access to more tools you can gain access to. So that's one of the reasons why I've been building out characters this way. We have 2 weapon damage enchants here to build up our weapon damage, And then on the ring or the necklace, we are using an infused with magic recovery because we do use a magic ability with this build a lot, and we kind of spam it. So we want to be able to have those resources to be able to do that, to keep it up. Now, moving on to the weapons. Starting with the shield, we have a sturdy Plague Doctor shield with a stamina enchant in it. Now, you don't have to use a stamina enchant. You can use a tri-stat if you want. The only reason why I have a stamina enchant in there, I believe, was because I made a mistake when I was working on making this character. I was probably rushing myself. I do this a lot sometimes. But yeah, you can put a tri-stat in here if you want. It's not going to really change the resources that much, as you can see. On the main weapon, we are using a decisive weapon with a hardening enchant to give us a little bit more extra survivability while we're tanking, and the decisiveness is to help build this ultimate. Moving on to the back bar, we have an ice staff with a infused crusher, infused trait with a crusher enchant. This is so we can keep up crusher more effectively when we're tanking. Now, you can use a bow back here also with crusher enchant. It really depends on how you prefer to play. I myself use a bow, but a lot of people prefer ice staff, so that's why I put it here. Alright, now moving on to the other tools we have in our inventory for other roles. Now we have a bow. This is to increase our damage output for when we want to play more damage dealer. And we can use sword and shield still, or we can use a two-handed sword. And if you do this, use infused crusher. This is going to help you a lot. And then we do have a restoration staff for when we need to play more healer type, if we want to play that way. If we want to adjust our attribute points all into Magicka, play more healer. If we want to put ourselves more into a DPS type role, we can put everything into stamina. I will be showing that in a video later today with this same character. So that's the gear and everything. Let's go ahead and jump on over to the skills. And trust me, when you play this character, any character, and you start unlocking skills and abilities and passives, and you start to see that the more of these abilities and passives that you unlock, and the more tools you have available, the more access to things you have for different situations, whether you're playing PvE, PvP, soloing, or doing like dungeon groups or doing trial groups. A lot of skills and passives do come in handy in different situations. So it's always good, and I'm just going to say it's always good, but it's up to you on what skills you unlock and what passives you unlock. And before I go any further, yes, this is primarily a tank role character, but it's also a solo character that's unbelievably powerful for soloing, and it's also a really good damage dealer, and it's a really good healer. So, not a great healer, a good healer. It's a good tank, a really good tank, really good at soloing, really good at damaging, but it's an okay healer. I need to clarify that. Alright, when it comes to the weapons, we do use primary two-handed, so we do have all these skills and passives unlocked for two-handed, so we can pick and choose what we want to use when we're in different situations. Same thing goes with sword and board. And bow, we have all the passives and abilities. Now, if you do want to unlock dual wield, you can. Dual wield with this is amazing. I used to run it a lot, but on the live servers, I just don't have the skill points to do that. On the live servers, in fact, I barely have enough to do two-handed, sword and shield and bow right now. So, because this is my main character on live, and they use a they're my main crafter too. So I'm a little short on skill points. All right, moving on to armor. Light armor passes. Make sure you get these, especially on a Templar. You're going to want to get evocation because you get reduced Magicka cost. This is going to give you extra 2% added to the 4% you get for stamina, Magicka, and ultimates. Reduced cost. So, medium armor, top 2, bottom 1. Again, you're going to take advantage of the dexterity bonus. You're going to take advantage of Windwalker and athletics with this build. In the light armor passives, you do take advantage of spell warding and grace to some degree. Heavy armor, all the passives. Reason why? You're a heavy armor character. Immovable Brute is a really good thing that I like to use sometimes, especially in PvP. So, now moving on to world skills, you can be a vampire or a werewolf with this, that is up to you, but I prefer to be without. Soul Assault, Consuming Trap, those are two of the passives I like to use, and I've actually been using this a lot more lately. See, this does a little bit of damage over time to your target, but it fills an empty soul gem and restores 10% of your max health, magic, and stamina if an affected enemy dies. So when I'm solo playing, I actually use this, because I don't have to use potions to get resources back. I just kill enemies, and as I'm killing them, I'm getting resources back. Moving on, Soul Shatter's really good for anybody to unlock. Soul Summons is another good one to get, and then Soul Lock. The only reason why Soul Shatter is really good is if you're using Consuming Trap or Soul Assault on your bars. This way you can take advantage of this when you drop below 20% health. You can explode and do damage to enemies. Moving on to Guild, Fighter's Guild. I do unlock all the abilities, the abilities and the passives. Now, with this one, it's a little different than Meridia's Guardian. I do unlock Flawless Dawnbreaker because I use Flawless Dawnbreaker when I'm using two-handed. Always when I'm using two-handed, I use Flawless Dawnbreaker. As you can see, I have a few other abilities here unlocked for different situations. Tanking, survivability and tanking in group situations. And then also, like, this is for damage, this is for when I'm solo playing. Mage's Guild, I do have all the different passives and abilities unlocked because sometimes I do like to use these abilities for, like, when I'm playing a healer, like Inner Light to boost my max magicka, Degeneration to give me extra major sorcery for when I'm solo playing and I'm playing a healer type, and Spell Symmetry for when I need the extra resources when I'm tanking. So, and Volcanic Rune's just fun to play with. No offense. Then moving on to the ultimate, or not the ultimate, it's the Psijic Order. The ultimate we have is Temporal Guard. It's a really good one, actually, for PvE and PvP, because while slotted, you gain minor protection, reducing your damage taken by 8%. Works out really good in PvP, so... But in PvE, it also can work, especially if you're doing, like, I use it a lot in, like, public dungeons, and especially if I'm farming. Moving on, we have Time Freeze. This I use also sometimes when I'm farming as a way to CC and crowd control enemies, especially in Craglorn. So, next, we have Crushing Weapon. This is here for if we need it, we want to use it kind of thing. It's a really nice ability. And then we have Race Against Time. This is just to give us minor force if we want to use this instead of Trap Beast. Mainly I use this because it also increases my movement speed. So, like, I use this when I'm, like, running around the world and I'm farming materials. So, next we have Min Spirit. This is a really good ability for group healing. And then we have Deep Thoughts for if we're tanking, we need resources. Undaunted, I do unlock all the abilities and the passives. The passives in Undaunted are super important. And the only way you can get these is through the dungeon dailies, doing dungeons. There is a delve daily that you can do through the Undaunted camps, and the Undaunted camps are outside any of the 3 major capital cities. So, Wayrest, Elden Root, and oh my god, I can't even remember it. Now I gotta go look. See what happens when you forget things. And Mournhold. So those are where the Undaunted camps are. I don't remember if there's one outside of Vardenfels out of Vivek, and I don't think there's one outside of Somerset or even in Elsweyr. I think it's just those 3 major cities where the camps for the Undaunted are, and you can do the Undaunted quest to unlock that skill line. And this one just allows you to get more resources back from synergies. This one allows you to increase your max health and stamina and magicka by having one of each armor type equipped. That's why we wear 1 light, 1 medium, and 5 heavy. And then moving on to Alliance War, I do unlock certain passive abilities for when I'm playing PvE mostly. Now I do use some of these abilities when I do play PvP, like I will use Stalwart Guard in PvP. I will use Efficient Purge in PvP. I will use this in PvE or PvP, it doesn't matter. And then sometimes in PvP I even use Aggressive Warhorn and Echoing Vigor and Caltrops. Racials, always unlock your racial passives. I'm not going to go over it with the Wood Elf, but just make sure you get your racial passives. It's very important. Alchemy, medicinal use, and then provisioning, Gourmand and Connoisseur. Alchemy's medicinal use basically makes your potions work better for you, in increasing their effectiveness, or their usefulness, I should say, not effectiveness. It increases the amount of time they last. And then Gourmand and Connoisseur do the same thing, but they add actual minutes to the source. So, really good for any character to get these. Now, moving on to the skills we have on our bar for this setup, we are using Pierce Armor. This is to apply Major Breach and Major Fracture, but it's mainly for the taunt and the damage. Now, we can, the benefit is Major Breach and Major Fracture. It adds a nice debuff to the enemy. Really fits the sword and board in a sense. Next we have Deep Slash. We don't use Heroic Slash with this character because we like to apply Minor Maim to multiple targets, and in dungeons doing so helps your group a lot. So as you can see, it does 6,000 damage, 1,000 something extra damage to other targets. It also applies a CC, a 60% movement speed. And then it also does the Minor Maim, which reduces damage by the enemies by 15% for 12 seconds. In PvE, if you didn't know, no enemy can hit you with a critical. According to what I've been told, that's what I keep hearing. So you can't get hit by criticals, so this really helps. Moving on, the next ability we have on our bar is Blazing Shield, and this thing can absorb 12,602 damage for 6 seconds. Each enemy near you increases the shield strength by 4%, and then when the shield expires, it explodes outwards, dealing 37% of the damage it absorbed to nearby enemies. And it can also proc a really cool passive in the Aedric Spear line called the Burning Light, and as you can see, you have a 25% chance to deal either physical or spell damage or magic damage, whichever is higher, and the effect can occur once every 0.5 seconds. So this is mainly here for the shield. And our biting jabs when we're solo playing, or we're playing, just playing dungeons or delves or whatever, and we're playing more damage dealer. Next ability we have is a self-heal, and it's also a group heal, and that is Echoing Vigor. Now this thing, renew your forces, resolve, healing yourself and nearby allies for 7,512 health over 5 seconds. As you can see, this thing has a 15-meter radius. It's got a large radius, and it can cover a lot of people. So, moving on to the next ability, we have Absorb Magic. Bolster your defenses, absorbing up to 21,000 damage from the next spell projectile cast at you, and healing for 16% of your max health. While you have a shield equipped and this ability slotted, the amount of damage you can block is increased by 8%, and the cost of blocking is reduced by 8%. This is another reason why we keep this here. It's a nice way to heal. It's also a nice way to get some extra blocking capabilities. Now, moving on to the next ability, we have Flawless Dawnbreaker. And yes, I do use Flawless Dawnbreaker, even as a tank. This is more for when I'm soloing, like playing quests or something, that it's here. But it also helps, not only does it help with damage, it also gives me increased weapon damage by 5%, which applies to my Echoing Vigor. So it helps us heal out a lot. Now, moving on to the back bar, we have our first ability, which is Blazing Spear. This is more of a group support ability that you can use. It's really good. It does damage up front, it does damage over time, and then it also does synergy to where people can activate the synergy and gain resources based on whichever is higher, either magic or stamina. They get about 4k back. With their synergy passive, they will get more. Alright, moving on to the next thing we have Blockade of Frost. This has a CC on it. It has reduced movement speed of 40% for 8 seconds, and then it also, any chilled enemies that are in it, if this does apply chilled, it will immobilize them. You can also use the Ice Staff for blocking and taunting, by the way. Moving on to the next ability, we have Power of the Light. This is here to apply a minor fracture, minor breach debuff on the enemies. It also does stacked damage and deals 20% of the damage that the enemy takes back to them, and a total copy damage of 14,593. It works better when you're in a group. If you're by yourself, you're going to be lucky if you can get this thing to do that much damage. But it does do damage up front, so... Next ability we have is another group utility ability. This is a heal and a damage ability. It scales off your max offensive power stat, but it also is a synergy that your allies can use. You get this effect as well. Anytime you activate this ability, it cleanses 2 harmful effects from you, and then while in the area, you and your allies heal for X amount, and the enemies take X amount of magic damage every 2 seconds for 12 seconds. Allies in the area can activate the Purify synergy, cleansing all harmful effects from themselves and healing for X amount of health. And then, of course, like I said, it scales with your highest offensive stat, so either Magicka or Stamina. Next up, we have our Restoring Focus. This is our primary defensive buff. The Ruin grants major resolve and major ward, increasing your physical and spell resistance by 5,280. You also recover 240 stamina every second. Standing within the Ruin increases your physical and spell resistance by 50%. So if I'm inside this, like I said, if I'm inside this and I cast it, on the back bar I go to 2730. On the front bar I go to 3129. If I step out of the circle, I go to 2629 and then 2724. I'm still within range of tanking. I try to stay inside this circle if you can. If you need to dodge roll out, dodge roll back in. But always stay within the circle. So... And then last but not least, Aggressive Warhorn. A lot of tanks use this. Honestly, I use it only because I get yelled at if I don't. Otherwise, I would use other abilities. There is some other really great abilities you can use besides Warhorn, but this one is a great one for boosting max stats and to give your group major force. So this one boosts your max Magicka and max stamina by 10% for 30 seconds, and then it grants major force, increasing critical damage by 15% for 9 seconds. So it's kind of a nice thing to have in your group. Mostly for trial play. Sometimes dungeon play, it works out really well, but ultimates in dungeons is a lot harder to get than it is in trials, I've figured. So, and that is the skills. Now we're going to take a look at the CP. Starting with the red tree. We have 56 into Ironclad. This reduces the damage taken from against direct damage attacks by 20%. We have 18 into Spell Shield, increasing your spell resistance by 1729. You don't have to have 5 pieces of heavy armor. This you can get all the time. Moving on over here, we have 31 into Thick Skin, reducing your damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. We have 43 into Hardy, reducing your damage taken from physical, poison, disease damage by 10%, and then 43 in Elemental Defender, reducing your damage taken from Flame, Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 10%. Moving on over here to the final red tree, we have 40 into Bastion, increasing the effectiveness of your damage shields by 16%, and then 19 into Quick Recovery, increasing your healing received by 5%. And then we have 20 into Heavy Armor Focus, increasing your physical resistance by 1900, while wearing 5 pieces or more of heavy armor. The reason I do this setup with the resistances is because I find that it works a little better in surviving. This gives you an extra 2% at 66. This gives you an extra 2% at 56. And this is, we're not changing anyways. So when I do this, and I put that 1900 in there, for every 660 points of resistance that you have on your character, you get 1% mitigation. So it's almost better to do this than it is to dump everything into Hardy, Elemental Defender, and Ironclad. The reason why is because this is going to give you roughly anywhere between 2 and almost 3% resistances if you include all the other benefits you get from like heavy armor, passives, your medium armor passives. Well, medium armor doesn't really give you anything, and your light armor passives. So if you're wearing medium armor and you have this, you're going to get the spell resistance, that 300 and something. That actually gives you over just enough to get 3% damage mitigation. And then in medium armor, if you have 1900 in here and you have one piece of heavy, you're going to get another 3% in damage mitigation from that. So it's really up to you on how you want to do it. This is just how I like to set it up. Moving on to the green tree, starting with Warlord, we have 40 points in here, reducing our break free cost by 16%. We do have 16 into Sprinter, reducing our sprint cost by 10%. 16 into Bashing Focus, reducing your bash cost by 10%. And then moving on over here, we have 43 into Mooncalf, increasing your stam recovery by 10%. And we have 75 into Tenacity, increasing your mag and stam recovery of your fully charged heavy attacks by 14%. Moving on, we have 40 into Tumbling, reducing your dodge roll cost by 16%. 40 into Shadow Ward, reducing your block cost by 16%. And then in the blue tree, we have 43 into Blessed, increasing your healing done by 10%. We have 35 into Physical Weapon Expert, increasing your light and heavy attacks by 20% with all stamina-based weapons and werewolf form. And then we have 40 into Mastered Arms, increasing your damage done with direct damage attacks by 16%. Remember, most of the attacks we do with Sword and Shield are direct damage. So our light and heavy attacks are going to be boosted by this. With these two having the 75 points into them, you get Butcher, which increases your light and heavy attack damage by 5%. When you add 1800 weapon damage to your existing weapon damage, your light and heavy attacks below 25% start doing a lot of damage. Moving on, we have 56 into Mighty, increasing your physical poison disease damage done by 12%. We have 56 into Precise Strikes, increasing your critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities by 20%. And then 40 into Thaumaturge, increasing your damage done with damage over time abilities or effects by 16%. And that is the CP, skills, gear, attributes, everything necessary to play the Lord Knight character. Now, you guys probably want to see how well or effective this thing is in its role as a tank. Right? Okay, good. That's what we want to hear. I want to hear those loud cheers and roars from you guys. I can't really hear it, but it inspires me to take this thing into a dungeon and watch it die. But yeah, we're going to go over here to Depths of Malatar. It's one of the newer dungeons added to with the Wrathstone DLC. It is considered one of the more challenging group dungeons out there. And it is. It's a really tough one if you don't know what you're doing in here. But I'm just going to show you this in solo. And somebody asked me, well, in solo play, you're not really showing how effective it can be. If I can do this in solo, think about how good I am going to be within a group. That's the things that a lot of people keep forgetting. If I can survive this on my own, in a group, it's going to be a lot easier. So, on normal mode, this thing is just going to walk through here. Alright. So we are going to get our tripods ready. Really? Open the door. Weirdo. So we're going to go in here. We're going to get all of our buffs set. Resistances, debuffs, all that. Wall of Elements, Spear Shards, and then we're going to swap the front bar and we're just going to start going to town. For this purpose, I am using Dawnbreaker to get rid of the trash, take it out. And there is a reason why I did switch to using Decisive. It wasn't because of what a lot of people think. It wasn't because of the meta. It's because anytime you use an ability or something that gives you ultimate, you have a percentage chance of getting another ultimate. So you're actually going to get 2 ultimate no matter what. And it just really helps you build that ultimate back up so you can use things like Warhorn or Dawnbreaker a lot faster. So, alright, there we go. We're moving on to the next group. Now remember, this thing is primarily a tank, but it can play a pretty beastly damage dealer as well. And it works out really good in solo play. Now in this fight, I would have actually gone in after the Spellcaster first, because that Spellcaster can really mess up a group. And then I would also taunt these 3 melee guys, because these guys are going to do a lot of damage to my group. Die. Here, have a sword. I'm gonna see if I can get the just to show you guys like how much damage this thing does when it's in heavy attacks. So it's doing like 5k. There, 10k damage heavy attack, and its light attacks can do almost about the same. So, all right, now we're in with the boss. Let's get our stuff ready here. There he is. He's hiding over there. We're gonna heavy attack him with the ice staff to taunt him. We're gonna get our resistance buff down. And you see how I sat there and I blocked with the ice staff mostly? That was so I could use my resources from Magicka to to basically just block his attacks. So, but I focus mostly on sword and board still. And the reason why is because my sword and board, as you can see, does a lot of basically a lot of blocking. And I can also deal more damage with my sword and board in the long run. So, alright, I am going to let him do his thing and kill me, okay, guys? But this way you guys can see for yourselves. Like, I can solo this guy even with a sword and board. I've done it way too many times. But that is the Lord Knight character, and if you guys want to see what this thing can do solo, please come back and check out the video for solo play, which I will be releasing shortly after this one, roughly about an hour or two. That way you guys have time to check out this video, see what this is all about, and you guys can go from there. But you will see why I make this character use the slime craw for when I play solo and when I'm also doing more of a damage dealer setup. So, but that is it for this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed showing it. And I do have a lot more stuff coming this next week. I have a lot more builds that I've got ready to go, plus a few special releases I might be doing over the weekend or just today. You know, might release it extra today. We'll see. But I do have some special request builds. And you guys can request builds. Please feel free to. I will try to help you as best as I can. That's what I'm here for. So, but other than that, you guys know what's coming next. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.